Hi there, I'm Beth, and this week I'll be talking about boxer shorts. Doll-sized, like these Smart Doll ones, which are prototypes for the patterns I'll be showing you today. They are elasticated at the waist and have an opening fly at the front. As you can see, I'm also going to be showing you a 1/6 scale version for Blythe as well. It also has the working fly. After the first prototypes, I made this pair, which is being modelled by Marceline, who's trying out Legion's wig today. I'm actually super happy with the fit of these. They look like a tighter pair of men's boxers. I think they look fantastic on the classic body. As you can see, I'm making good use of the Smart Doll branded elastic that I got in Chaos. Next up, I tried to make the fit a little looser and came up with this pattern, modelled by Natsuko and her peach body. I'm also really happy with the fit of these, which I made specifically for her to allow plenty of movement in the legs. That looser pattern almost fits the pair body, but needed some reshaping, so I came up with my third pattern for the pair body. I reshaped the pattern more for this pair, giving the lower legs a more flared fit. I made this pair using striped flannel and even stitched on 2 buttons for the fly. I think they look very comfortable and could be pyjama bottoms. I'll give you a quick look at my original template pieces. These are the pieces for the snug-fitting classic body. They're quite simple. Then the second template for the looser-fitting classic body, just slightly reshaped. And the pair body shorts, which have more of a curved angle to them, not quite so square. I had to simplify and shrink the pattern for the Blythe doll. Here's my notes from when I was drafting them. I took the waist, hips, thigh and crotch measurements first. I decided to merge the 3 pieces into one to eliminate the side seams. Then started sketching the shape out to match the measurements I took. This is my first template, which I used for the black and yellow spotted pair here. It worked out okay, but the elastic I used isn't very strong, and I think the fit is a little loose for my liking. So I've drafted up a second version, which I'll now show you how to sew. I've traced the outline onto a lightweight cotton and transferred the pattern markings using a heat erasable pen. I've also fully outlined the shape with fray check, which I will allow to fully dry before I cut the fabric. Hopefully here you can see the differences between the first and second drafts and the reshaping I did to fit the smaller body better. The first thing we'll do is hem the 2 cuffs. There's a 5mm seam allowance, and I'll cut some snips into the seam allowance at the curves, close to the crotch, before folding in the seam. I'm going to use fabric glue to hold my seams in place before I top stitch them from the right side at the machine. Here, they're sewn, and next we're going to turn in the 2 folds at the longer end for the fly. I fold and use my fingernail to lightly crease the edge before folding in again along the second line. Looking from the right side, you should still see a little step out from the front crotch curve. I take this to the machine and top stitch it. Next, I align both crotch curves with right sides in. You should be able to see the shorter side of the fly still poking out a touch from the back. We're going to sew the curved crotch seam up to the marked point. Here, that's been sewn, and now we can finish off the second outer side of the fly opening. I flip the shorts right side out, fold in and finger press the fly seam like this. It should continue on straight from the curved crotch seam that we just stitched. Looking from the inside, it should be straight. Now, I'll fold in just 2 or 3 millimeters of that raw edge before folding again along the line we just creased. I'll take this to the sewing machine and top stitch from the right side. Here you can see that's done, and if I flip the shorts right side out again, you can see that we have that nice overlapping fly opening. I make sure the internal seam allowance is pushed to the right before making a very small reinforcement stitch across the bottom of the fly. Next, I'm going to connect the 2 halves of the crotch. Again, making sure the seam allowance is folded to the right, I simply align the 2 short crotch ends and stitch with a 5mm seam allowance. I can now flip the shorts right side out to see how they're looking. Really cute, and I'm happy with the fit. If you wanted to make this pattern a different way, you could gather the waist, attach a fabric waistband with a snap fastening, and use the front fly as the main closure. For my elastic waistband though, I'm going to stitch the top of the fly closed before adding the elastic. The Smart Doll elastic that I've used for the larger shorts is 1 centimetre wide. The elastic that I'm going to use for these shorts is a little narrower, maybe 6 or 7 millimeters. I recommend testing your elastic before deciding on the length to cut. We don't want it to stretch too tightly over the hips in case it damages their articulation. It just needs to be tight enough to sit at the waist comfortably. For the strength of this elastic, I've cut it at about 9.5 centimeters. I'm going to hand stitch it into a closed loop with about a centimetre overlap. First, I singe the ends with a lighter so they don't fray. I mark the centre back of the shorts and pin the overlapped part of the elastic there. I like to stitch the elastic inside first, so it can be flipped to the outside, hiding the raw edge under the elastic. I will hand stitch the innermost edge of the elastic using a back stitch and stretching the elastic as I go so it will retain its stretch. This is a bit fiddly, so by all means, if you prefer to fold over the raw edge of the fabric first and stitch the elastic from the outside, then do that instead. Once the lower edge of the elastic is stitched, I make sure none of the fabric shows above the elastic line. Then I can flip the elastic right side out and hand stitch the lower edge with a back stitch again. Here you can see that's completed, and that from inside and out, the waistband is very neat with minimal bulk, perfect for this small scale. I'm really happy with the fit on the A-zone jointed body, and also on the original Blythe or Lika body too. Next up, I'll show you how to sew the boxer shorts for Smart Doll using the pear pattern. I put these together a little differently than the 1/6 scale boxers. First, I'm trying to work out how much elastic I'll need for her waistline. The printed Smart Doll elastic is spaced to fit the classic waist exactly, with one instance of the phrase, "With Smart Doll, the future is in your hands." I wondered if the pear waistline was big enough to fit the phrase fully twice, but it's not. I should have checked the underwear that came with Marvel here, as it can be positioned to fit the phrase fully in the front, but I ended up positioning it differently. I cut this elastic at 28 centimeters long and stitched it together into a loop. Then suddenly our cat decided it was time for a routine inspection. Again, I'm going to use lightweight cotton and will trace my template pieces onto the back side with the centre of the back piece aligned parallel with the selvage edge, and with the front fly of each side aligned that way too. I cut out the fabric pieces with the centre markings and stitching lines transferred using a heat erasable pen. I don't bother to fray check these larger clothing pieces, as I find it simpler to zigzag or overlock them instead. I start by folding in and top stitching the longer fly first of all. Then I align and stitch the two side seams with a 7mm seam allowance. I overlock those side seams, pressing them towards the back. Then I overlock the lower hem and crotch areas, before pressing the leg cuffs in and top stitching them. Both leg cuffs are hemmed, so now I align the curved crotch seams with right sides in. Making sure the front flies are lined up too, I then stitch the curved crotch seam. Once sewn, I flip the shorts right side out and crease the outer edge as before. I make sure the fold of the fly runs straight through to the crotch seam. I fold in the raw edge and tuck it in before top stitching at the machine from the right side. Again, we can see the neatly overlapped fly opening. I've already stitched a horizontal reinforcing line at the bottom. I'll stitch the top of the fly closed before turning right side in and aligning the short crotch centre parts. I push the seam allowance towards the right and stitch them together. They're looking really good already, and now I can insert the elastic. This time we have to take note of the direction of the lettering. So, to help me, I hold it on the outside the way I want it to end up, and flip it over the top of the raw edge to the inside to show me how I need to stitch it first. I mark the front centre of the elastic and align it with the inside front centre seam. Here's how it should look so far, with my elastic text inside and upside down. I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, swap out my top thread for black and stitch it from the inside. I'm just stitching along the lower edge of the elastic here. You can see me stretching the elastic out as I sew so that it will gather the fabric when released. I sew around the entire waistline, dispersing the elastic evenly. Just as before, I check that none of the fabric or threads are extending above the elastic line. Once trimmed, I return to the sewing machine to flip the fabric right side out and stitch down. This time, I'm sewing from the right side, so the black thread is hidden on the black elastic, but my white bobbin thread is still on the inside of the garment. I gently stretch out the elastic as I sew, resulting in a lovely, neat waistline again. I'm so happy with how these boxer shorts all turned out. I'm going to share all of the sewing patterns with you for free over at bethramsden.com. I'll bundle them all together into one PDF, and I especially recommend trying out this pattern if you tend to struggle with the overlapped fly fastening on other garments, such as the Culture Japan jeans. I really think that a small project like this will help give you the confidence in tackling those overlapped closures on other clothes too. So, definitely try this out a few times and soon you'll feel like an expert. Before I go, please let me welcome my newest supporter over on Patreon, Kiana Greenfield. Thanks so much for joining me there. My patrons are currently enjoying sneak peeks of upcoming projects, and my custom doll tier are seeing the start of my next commissioned Blythe project. Links are in the description if you're interested in commissioning a custom doll of your own or just want to see more content from me. You'll find the sewing pattern linked in the description box below too, and I'd love to hear how you get on. Feel free to tag me in your pictures on Instagram. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed today's sewing tutorial and will leave me a nice comment below. Let me know which pair of shorts were your favourite and who modelled them best. Take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!
My appetite, don't leave me here.